Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today we are taking a look at some Jack Kirby. This is Superman's Pal, the new Jimmy Olsen, issue number 141, cover dated September 1971. This is a weird issue I've talked about before, not necessarily my favorite, but also not something I don't enjoy. Just kind of a weird, wacky kind of vibe that started off in last issue where we're introduced to Goody Rickles, who's kind of like a superhero version of Don Rickles, but not actually Don Rickles. And then in this issue, he actually introduces Don Rickles. So I don't know where he got this idea, just kind of very weird and out there. I don't know how it worked back then, how celebrities in the comic, I don't think you had to get their permission or anything like that. So you got like right away, just a huge, black and white picture of Don Rickles on the cover being carried by Guardian and Superman here. And just again, an odd part of kind of the Kirby canon to integrate Don Rickles into the comic book. I feel like Jack Kirby was probably a huge fan of his, and his writing within this certainly indicates a good knack for writing Don Rickles-esque stuff. I don't know if he was actually maybe taking a little bit from stuff he'd heard actually from Don Rickles or kind of writing in his voice, but I definitely feel like Kirby had an affinity for Don Rickles' style humor. And I'll read a few examples as we go through the book. But yeah, just an odd conceit for a comic book. Let's read the hyperbole on the cover. I always think it's fun. Kirby says, "Don't ask it, just buy it." That's that's kind of pushy. Extra, the origin of the first Newsboy Legion. So that's the reprint that we're going to see at the end of this issue that DC has started putting into all their main books, or some of their main books that go up to 25 cents at the time. The price went up, but they added some extra pages, I guess, to compensate for that. I don't know exactly how popular it was back in the day. You weren't getting more story for your modern stories at that time, but you were getting like reprints of older ones, and with kind of bad print quality as well, as we'll see, and we saw in last review for the New Gods, right? And they would use those to reintroduce, I guess, the Golden Age characters that Jack Kirby himself was reintroducing in the 70s. So last issue in New Gods, we saw Manhunter, who gets reintroduced after the Fourth World Saga later on, near the end of Kirby's 70s run at DC Comics. And in this issue, we're going to see the original Guardian. And now, for the past few issues, we've been introduced to the clone of the original, who's the new Guardian. Not much of a difference in the costume, mostly just in the helmet, I would say. But overall, the look is fairly similar. So that's it for the cover, I guess. Oh, one more thing to read. Rushing towards the greatest climax ever seen in, I'm going to assume that says comics with an S. Clearly, this cover wasn't formatted properly, and a lot of it gets cut off on the side here. Crappy production issues from the 70s. This brown background, again, I don't know if it's a great choice overall, but I do like it here because it harkens back so much to the 70s, that period that I love going back to, even though I wasn't born back then. Just something about it. So more Kirby collage. He's doing the splash, double page splash in this issue as well. So I like the idea, again, that he was trying experimental stuff like this. But a lot of times, I've talked about before in the past, the production value of the comics wasn't yet advanced enough to really translate this stuff. At Marvel, they tried, didn't really work out. Here, there's still, I'm starting to see like different colors. There's 2 or 3 colors on this one. But it's still kind of murky and blurry, and the layers aren't very well defined. And talking about that here on the double page splash, I think one of the problems, not so much with the print quality or the colors, like I think that gives it that cool 70s psychedelic, surrealist kind of vibe, but maybe in the choice of images themselves, right? Because I've seen higher quality prints of these in the Kirby Collector, right, where you can actually, it looks like the actual glistening page of the magazine that Kirby probably cut out from. And what tends to happen with the layering on these is, you've got different images at the same kind of focal point and the same kind of very, very good quality image where it's not blurry or anything like that. But things that are in the background tend to be blurrier and colored differently. So I feel like a lot of those, when you see them actually in print in the Kirby Collector, how they were supposed to look, they look very flat. And there's a little bit of this here. I feel the blurring helps out a little bit, the overall blurring of the printing, to attenuate that effect a little bit. And I also feel like Kirby's starting to learn a little bit about that kind of effect when you're doing collage. So like an example here is, how clean this image is and the planet, and this one's ahead of that one. And then you've got ships in the foreground here that are just a little bit blurry. So it kind of doesn't work, right? Where I feel it does work is back here with whatever picture he cut out here, creating kind of the star effect. They're very blurry. And even this kind of idea here of the blurry light works well as background elements to the elements that are closer to us that are much more in focus. So Kirby, I guess, experimenting, still learning even back in this day, how to work the collages in there, and eventually he will stop because just the production values aren't quite there yet. So basically we've been following since last issue. Superman's kind of travels through the cosmic unknown in this spaceship that he got into, but he's disguised as Clark Kent, so he kind of just can't just pop out as Superman, but at least he knows he's probably a little bit safer than a mere mortal would be. And out of the shadows of space appears Light Ray. And then we're back to our main kind of focus storyline with the Guardian and Goody Rickles once again, and Jimmy Olsen, those ridiculous redrawn faces that we're going to see. Coletta's doing the inking. There's bits where I think he's really working well with the squiggles and the Kirby kind of textures and stuff, and then there's others where, I don't know, the face just looks slightly goofy and old school, right? More of a 60s kind of look. I've said this before, I feel like Coletta was still inking in the 60s, and when Mike Royer jumps on, we're almost there, guys. Mike Royer's almost here. Kirby's art gets projected into the future, past 1971. Can't wait. So these characters have been poisoned, right? Last issue, so they got about an hour to live or something like that before the molecules in their body are going to kill them. Very inconsistent when it comes to drawing the Guardian. The costume changes a little bit, mostly in the helmet area. I don't know if this is Coletta not inking a line and the colors being confused, but he's supposed to have kind of a yellow strap going all the way underneath, and here he's got nothing, right? The line is indicated here, but not on this side, so, you know, not a lot of consistency as far as the colors go with Guardian in this one. You'll see some other instances of that. I love the shot here. Almost harkens back to the more Golden Age kind of stuff that we're going to see at the end of this issue real quick, of the angles that Kirby chooses. And you'll see the parallel between, you know, there's not that much of a difference, honestly, between the overall composition and layouts of the Golden Age stuff as versus to this, you know, as it relates to the 70s stuff. So the buildings, you know, the shapes he uses and stuff were already kind of there in the late 30s, early 40s. And so now we're back in Morgan Edge's office, and the actual Don Rickles shows up here. So we're going to get a great bit of caricature all the way throughout. I love how all these people are clamoring, drawing a lot of people just kind of standing there in an office around someone. Hard enough, but, you know, everyone's very distinct. They're holding papers to get autographs and stuff. Lots of nice little detail there. Coming back here, create that layering with the hands in the foreground, the characters in the background. And then, okay, eventually, everyone kind of skeetles off as the boss, Morgan Edge, comes in, and they leave Don Rickles alone. So Morgan Edge helps him up, and helps him up and gets him back dressed up and his jacket back on. And I love just the expressions here. You know, not quite Don Rickles, to be honest, but definitely the feel of him. There's some shots where they're better than others, right? And this is also Don Rickles in the early 70s. I'm not as familiar with. He had a bit more hair and obviously looked a little younger. I mean, he was never the handsomest guy, right? So we're back with Light Ray and Superman. Light Ray just kind of phasing through, right? Because he's got all sorts of light-related powers. And, you know, obviously taking this character at face value as Clark Kent, not knowing that he's actually talking to Superman. Love this foreshortening here, but just how, like, how much shorthand is he applying to how he's drawing this hand here? It's almost not a hand in a weird way. Like, the thumb is huge, but it totally works, and it's just very powerful, very Kirby, right? This is unfortunate too. Again, the colorist. So these are the parademons who are supposed to be here. The boots are yellow and the pants are green, so you kind of got a bit of that. The gloves are yellow, but then up here there should have been some green and yellows as well, right, for the rest of the costume design. And I should look this up, I guess, but I feel like there's probably or possibly a different colorist for Jimmy Olsen than there is on New Gods, where most of the parademons have appeared up to this point, or have they? I think they have. We've seen the parademons a few times. You know, it would have been nice to have at least that consistency of their uniform. The colors are, again, green and yellow. Love the scene again when Kirby has to draw tons of characters and environment. He's just so good at it. This, you know, they're in the subway and Goody Rickles is basically complaining about the poison. He feels himself dying and stuff. And there's, like I said, some funny bits here that I want to read out, because this is kind of like Kirby interpreting Don Rickles, really. I think it's activating the poison, right? Jimmy boy, I can feel it, hot and crazy like. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Jimmy. Goodbye, you old. Goodbye already, jerk. And then, but before you go, Schmo, jump into a telephone booth and get into a decent suit. I don't know if that's a reference to Superman using the telephone booth to get change from Clark Kent to Superman and vice versa. I feel like it is. And then in a Don Rickles manner, look out, Zelda. I assume, I could be wrong in this, but I feel like I know enough about old names and history and stuff that Zelda is probably a reference to a witch, right? Maybe in the Wizard of Oz or something. But anyways, that's definitely a witch's name. So by calling her Zelda, you know, he's implying that she's a witch, right? Like kind of like the use of the name Karen today. You're steaming me. You may yet leave this train with a split shopping bag. And you hockey puck. Can't you read signs? They say no smoking in this car. I can smell you, man. Look who's talking, because he's starting to kind of emanate and smoke is coming off of him because the nitrate poison that they ingested through the food last issue is going to burn them up from the inside, right? And yeah, one last thing once again about this crowd shot, just the unfortunate face change for Jimmy Olsen. But all these different characters, you know, you can see what a great observationalist, observator, whatever word you want to use, that Jack Kirby is, in all the different fashion, the hairstyles, right, from the early 70s. You know, I almost feel like this is maybe a little bit later, but like I'm watching like Welcome Back Kotter or something. I love her facial expression here. Just this guy's hairstyle, the angle, just a master illustrator is Jack Kirby. So yeah, definitely signs of Goody Rickles. You know, what they're saying is your metabolism is reacting to the chemicals. So the more he gets worked up, the more the smoke's going to kind of come off of him here. And another kind of Don Rickles moment. It looks like I'm going first, Jimmy. I ate more of the stuff than you did. Now let him get to my exit speech. Tis a far, far better thing I do. So his last, you know, will and testament, I guess, is what he's saying out loud, right, in quotes. And I can't believe this. I'm dying, but I'm getting laughs, right? Because everyone just thinks he's hilarious. Guardian has been sent to stop Intergang, right? And he's found their mobile, what does he call it? The mobile home. And inside members of Intergang, right? You recognize their costumes from last issue. So there's a few different sets of minions in these New Gods Fourth World books, right? So there's the Intergang kind of soldiers, and then there's the parademons that we just saw, and then there's kind of the youth ranks on Apocalypse that I think, you know, originally Scott Free is part of, that I think they're maybe meant to eventually become parademons, but there's like, you know, almost like Kirby's equivalent to the Hitler Youth on Apocalypse. We'll see those later, New Gods and Mr. Miracle and stuff. Always love those shots, you know, where Kirby, the character's, you know, bounding and going so fast that, you know, part of him is actually, you know, outside of the panel into the next almost, right? So that's kind of the effect you're getting here. Also, I don't know if I'm glad I kind of stopped on this. This may be the first instance here. See these two straight lines in the middle? This to me definitely is not a motion line, although it could be. Maybe that's what it is, right? But if you erase this a little bit here and this a little bit here, this would be like one of those panels that you split in two, one image split into two panels, right? Which I don't know if Kirby ever did. I think he does maybe on the Hunger Dogs or some of that 80s stuff that's a little more kind of creative with the layouts. But I don't know exactly what the intention was here, if it was for a two-panel kind of image or if it was just part of the movement of Guardian across the panel. But it seems strange that they would be almost smack dab in the middle and very kind of parallel and straight. So, you know, if it was to be like these lines here, you'd want that line to curve a little bit if that was like a motion line. Some of the stuff I've been mentioning in the Eric Larson reviews where he's using these types of panels, I call them the Kirby four-panel page, right, for some of the action that's going on. Very cool. Love the foreshortening on Guardian here, jumping over this desk. Really cool kind of shot. Guardian kind of being, you know, that Captain America kind of athletic, jumpy character, if I can define him that way. Finally, Goody Rickles meets Don Rickles, and we get a lot of awesome cartooning here. A lot of exaggeration. Obviously, he really draws Don Rickles with a bulbous head, which I think is kind of hilarious. I mean, he's got the overall vibe again. And then the clashing aesthetic with Jimmy Olsen's face. Now, you think they might be at odds, which they are, but they seem to actually be getting along fairly because, you know, I guess they're the same person. I guess that's what's implied there. And here the light starts emanating because Jimmy and Goody Rickles are about to basically blow up because of that poison they ingested. Morgan Edge makes sure that Don Rickles doesn't die, throws him into what he calls the ante room, reads some magazines here. And as the characters are kind of fading away, Guardian crashes into the other room. Love this panel here of him crashing through the window. Just the big chunks in the foreground, small chunks in the background, layering of all that works really well. And there's an explosion. We assume maybe the characters are gone, but no, they're safe and sound. They were given the antidote by Guardian just in time. And just in time for another explosion. Clark Kent back from his travels, assuming Light Ray is the one who sends him back to Earth here, right? With one of the boom tubes. That would make sense because they're only ever used by the New Gods and also the denizens of Apocalypse, right? So both New Genesis and Apocalypse have access to the boom tubes. And that's going to be it for Don Rickles and Goody Rickles. Never to appear again. Don't know if they're officially part of DC continuity and if you can refer to them or use them at some point. Or if anyone has ever tried to do that. I'd be curious to see if Goody Rickles or Don Rickles ever appeared in a DC comic ever again, and who kind of had the balls to do something like that. And I can't wait till this next issue, The Man from Transylvania. If you know anything about that mythology, you know who we're talking about here. Although I guess because of copyright issues, he can't actually be called that. But maybe at this point, the rights had, the book Dracula, obviously is what I'm talking about, had been written, many years prior. So maybe the rights had lapsed at that point, right? If you know anything about this, all those old books, those horror books, Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy. I don't know if that's a book. Anyways, we'll go with Frankenstein and Dracula at least, are public domain now. And that's why, anyone can make a book, a movie, or any kind of media about Frankenstein or about Dracula. So I wonder if maybe that's why Kirby did it here in 1971. But I guess that's for next issue when we take a look at that. And real quick, I wondered if this was published just in the last issue of New Gods, but I guess in every new issue where we had flashbacks, retro reprints, I guess, from the late 30s, early 40s of Jack Kirby stuff, they introduced it with this self-portrait of Jack Kirby creating some super awesome pages, and I have to assume that's his window and basement studio in California, right, once he moved out there from New York City. So this is the issue that they're reprinting, number 7, 1942, the Newsboy Legion with the Guardian. As you can see, the design obviously more reminiscent of, I'm not quite sure where this comes from. Maybe the police hats that they wore back then. The shield kind of makes sense that it would be shaped like a policeman's badge. So I feel like that's what he's going for there. I will say I do think the new helmet is a better look, but not a huge kind of change for Guardian. The belt maybe is a little bit different, or he doesn't have it anymore. Anyways, really the helmet is the only real change. And I've talked about last time when we reviewed the New Gods, the print quality, not so great, but it's fun to see some Jack Kirby stuff from back in the day. The aesthetic is quite different because it's mostly being inked by Joe Simon. Jack Kirby's doing a lot of the heavy lifting as far as the drawing goes, and Joe Simon, I think, is doing more of the writing. And when I say writing, probably the dialogue, and Kirby's doing the plots and the pencils. Not going to spend too much time on this other than the fact, like I said, that it is the introduction of the original Newsboy Legion that we see now as the Newsboy Legion's parents in the 70s, and the introduction of Guardian, or the Golden Age Guardian, right? The one that the current Guardian has been cloned from. But yeah, other than that, I talked a little bit more about the Manhunter feature last time for the New Gods issue, but I'm just going to go through this one a little bit quickly, see if there's anything I want to point out. But yeah, it is still fun to see Kirby developing his storytelling. His layouts are going to change a lot, but I think a lot of the depictions of the characters and the kind of movement and stuff and that quality was there right from the early days of Jack Kirby doing comic books. The ever popular circular panel from that period appears a lot. And I guess that's going to be it for today, guys, and today's review of Superman's Pal, the new Jimmy Olsen, issue number 141. If you are still subscribed out there, guys, and you're still watching, thank you so much for the loyal support. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second. It really helps the channel out. It helps us grow and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone, once again, thank you so much for watching and have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe! Like!